Learn how to make royal icing 2 ways, using fresh egg whites and meringue powder. I'll show you my favorite decorating tips for professional results. A classic royal icing uses raw pasteurized egg whites to give that really smooth and shiny finish. Instead of using whole eggs, I like to use the pasteurized egg whites sold in cartons. This is going to save on waste and it's really easy to measure out. If you are going to use whole eggs, you need 5 tablespoons plus 1 teaspoon of egg white. Add 1/3 cup of egg whites, a half teaspoon of vanilla extract, 1/16 teaspoon of cream of tartar. Mix on medium-high speed, setting 8 on a stand mixer until the mixture is frothy, about 30 to 35 seconds. Add 4 1/4 cups of powdered sugar. I always measure this on a scale to get consistent results. Pulse on and off a few times so you don't make a huge mess in the kitchen. Mix on low speed, setting 2 for about 35 seconds to make sure everything's combined. Scrape down the bowl if needed. Now we're going to mix on medium speed, setting 6 until this starts to get light and frothy and shiny, and holds a stiff peak, about 4 to 5 minutes. Wow, this looks perfect! The royal icing is holding a stiff peak. This is perfect for making gingerbread houses, but if you're going to decorate cookies, you're going to want to change the consistency. When you're decorating sugar cookies, you're going to want a consistency of the icing so that it can create a nice outline and flood in the center with designs. This is much too thick, so we're going to thin this down. The first thing to make is border icing for piping or outlining. Once you've made a batch of icing, just add a half teaspoon of water at a time, then stir it all together. The consistency changes really quickly, so you don't want to just dump in a ton of water at one time. I'm going to add 1 more half teaspoon. We're getting really close. This looks good. You want it to be a little bit thinner than peanut butter, and it should be easy to pipe. Border icing is really great to use too if you want to make 3D designs on top of the cookie or really intricate decorations. Flood icing is used to fill in the design of the border icing. I know that I needed about 3/4 of a teaspoon to add to the border icing, so I can at least start there and then add more as needed. This is the consistency of the border icing, so I'm going to add some more water. Start to add about 1/4 teaspoon instead of a half teaspoon to make those fine consistency adjustments. When you lift the icing up, it should look like glue, and it should take about 15 seconds for it to sink back in. If the consistency gets a little bit too runny, just add a little bit of powdered sugar to thicken it up. Now you're ready to add these into piping bags to decorate. If you don't feel comfortable making royal icing with raw egg whites, you have a really great substitute using meringue powder. It's a shelf-stable product made from dried egg whites that's been heat treated to make a powder, destroying any harmful bacteria. It also contains a little bit of sugar and stabilizers like citric acid and cream of tartar, so you don't have to add as much in. All you need is some warm water to rehydrate the meringue powder. This is about 100 to 110 degrees. In your mixing bowl, add 4 cups of powdered sugar, 3 tablespoons of meringue powder, 9 tablespoons of warm water, and a half teaspoon of vanilla extract. Use the whisk attachment and mix on low speed, setting 2 for 7 minutes. The meringue powder has fully hydrated. Now it's time to whip it up some more. Mix on setting 4 until you reach a glue-like consistency, about 2 to 3 minutes. This is the perfect consistency for piping onto cookies. Now if you want a thicker consistency that's stiff for gingerbread houses, just whip this for about 30 to 60 seconds on setting 8. Now if you're not going to use this right away, you can store meringue powder royal icing at room temperature in an airtight container for 2 weeks. To add fun and festive colors to your royal icing, you've got a couple options. Food coloring. This is used to dye Easter eggs, and you can use it to decorate cookies. The thing is, it's suspended in a liquid, so you're gonna have to add a lot more to get a stronger color. This can also start to dilute the royal icing, so you want to be really careful not to make it too thin so you can't pipe it. Instead, my favorite thing to use is gel colors. It's suspended in a thicker liquid using things like cornstarch or gums so that it's much more concentrated, giving a vibrant color to your cookies without thinning out the icing. You can grab the dropper style where you just add a few drops at a time, or they come in these really cute tubs where you can actually scoop it out and then mix into your icing. If using food coloring, you only have the primary colors to work with and you have to mix them yourself. With the gel coloring, you have an assortment of different colors ranging from pinks to golds to even copper and black that you can use to color your icing. Let's see what happens when we use food coloring versus gel coloring. Add in 1 drop of food coloring and 1 drop of gel. Whoa, you could already see that the food coloring is much less viscous than the gel. The food coloring is a faint cotton candy pink color, and it's actually made the icing a little bit thinner. The gel coloring has much more of a vibrant red, and it's still nice and thick. Here are my favorite tools to use when decorating sugar cookies. Use disposable piping bags so you don't have to clean them out after you're done using them. These are 12-inch in size. They can hold a little and a lot, giving you a lot of versatility. Icing bag ties. They come in handy to prevent all of your icing from spilling out the other side. Small squeeze bottles with tops. This is really great to use when you're working with kids and it's easy to pipe out, or if you're making really intricate details. If you'd like to use piping tips with different sizes on the bottoms, you can. However, I find it a lot easier just to use a scissor to cut down to the size you want. Edible coloring markers are really great to use if you're making fine details or writing down names or words. Sprinkles! Make sure to add these on while the icing is still wet. Edible glitter dust. This adds a really fun pop of shine to any decorated cookie. Make sure that you have your border and your filling icing ready to go, because once you start piping, it's going to start to dry really quickly on the surface. For the border, just cut off a small portion of the tip. First, create the outline of the design. You want to let the border icing set a little bit so that it can catch the filling. Now make the white border icing. Cut a larger tip for the filling. Flood the outline with filling. It's okay if you don't get all of the little nooks and crannies because it will fill itself out. Now flood the white outline. I'm just going to use a toothpick to pull the filling to the edges and use it to combine the filling with the border so that you don't see a line. Do you want to build a snowman? The outline of the snowman. Let that set for a few seconds. Pull the flood icing to the center. Pull the filling to the edges just to give a really clean design. Use this piping bottle to make its hat. Alright, let's add eyes on Frosty. A carrot nose. A little smile. He's happy for the holidays. Use a toothpick to press down the icing. Frosty needs a little bit of a scarf to keep him warm during the winter. I like the texture of the border icing. And of course, some buttons made out of coal. He's ready for the holidays. Do not touch the cookies. Let them dry completely for about 6 to 8 hours with no cover so that they harden up nicely. To store cookies decorated with royal icing, you have 2 options. If using raw egg whites, store it at room temperature for up to 1 week. If using meringue powder, the cookies can store for 2 weeks at room temperature. Just place them in an airtight container. If you plan to layer the cookies on top of each other, place a wax sheet of paper in between, then place the other cookies on top. You could also freeze the cookies, but make sure to put it into individual plastic bags or cello bags, then into an airtight container, then place them in the freezer. Defrost before serving. Now that you know how to make royal icing, how will you decorate your cookies? Let me know in the comments below. If you want the full recipes, make sure to check out my website at jessicagavin.com. Happy decorating!